I'm excited about this episode of the Elite Recruiter Podcast. I have my special guest, Tori Liberty, with me to talk about growing your career within an agency and also scaling an agency. Tori is the president of Delta Construction Partners, and we were chatting a little bit beforehand. And was it 13 people when you started?
Yeah, about 13, and today we're rocking around like 32.
I was, so talk about incredible growth. We're going to kind of start walking through all that. But the question that I start out with everybody, how did you even end up in recruiting?
First and foremost, I've listened to every single one of your episodes, so I was prepared for this one. Love it all. Love it all, by the way. I am one of those unicorns that was trying to get into this industry. I know like 90% of the time that's not the case. I know. I get that look every time. So long story short, I graduated college and I had got my bachelor's degree in speech therapy. Did some internships, realized healthcare wasn't for me. I'm too empathetic for that. So I knew I wanted to get into sales in some capacity, right? I'm like, I have a good personality. I like people, blah, blah, whatever. And my mom actually one day was like, you'd be good at like college recruitment. And I was like, interesting. I'd never thought about that before. So I started doing some digging, just talking to people that I know, and I didn't even know the recruiting industry was a thing. I think we're like the best industry that no one knows about. So I found the recruiting industry, and I was like, I like that. Like I'm selling something, but it's something I'm helping people at the same time. So my story is really unique too with Delta because I this is the first place I interviewed right out of college, and they ended up not hiring me. They only had like 6 employees at the time, and they just didn't have the power to train somebody green. So one of my friends from high school had messaged me on some social media platform, and she was like, "Hey, girl, I'm moving to St. Pete. Like, we should meet up." And I was like, "Totally." So we met up for a glass of wine, and I was bartending at the time at a local restaurant, and she was like, "What do you want to do? Like, you're so smart. You've always been like the straight A kid, like whatever." And I was like, honestly, I want to get into recruiting, but I'm having a hard time finding somebody that will hire me without experience. And she was like, "I work for Randstad. That's what I'm doing here. I'm opening an office." And I was like, "No way." And she's like, "Yeah, do you want to interview?" And I said, "Yes." So, long story short, again, I went there and I did that for about a little over 2.5 years. And
Wait,
then,
real quick.
yeah,
So your friend was opening an office for them.
yeah.
And
Hmm.
really was that original, like, hey, let's get drinks? Was that really like, was she bringing you in
Yeah.
for an interview? Like, not knowing that
No,
you were
I
actually looking
don't.
for a recruiting
I mean,
opportunity?
at that time, like she didn't know that I wanted to do that, and I didn't know that she did that. Like when I say that we were like friends, we were best friends in high school. Like this was like just a connection that over the years, like we lost touch. We went to different colleges. Um, but I'll always be so grateful for maintaining, a positive, I guess, outlook in her eyes that she was willing to put me through that process. I literally wouldn't be where I am today without that conversation. Um, but there was something inside of me. Every day I would pass. Delta used to be in the BB&T building downtown, and every day I would drive past it. And every day I was like, I really wish that like small family company had worked out. Like I just loved those people. So I sent my resume and cover letter to my current CEO, and my cover letter was like a very funny anecdotal story of like our experience. And he within 5 minutes he was like, "Can you be here tomorrow?" And I said, "Yeah." So that's how that happened.
That's phenomenal.
I love
Talk
telling
about an
that story.
incredible, talk about an incredible story. And that's like when it comes to like, being a proponent of your organization, that is the story right there.
Yep. I'm not shy about
Phen-
telling it. Obviously.
So I got to ask, like, what at Delta Construction Partners originally, what did you fall in love with them originally before?
So many things. It's hard to pinpoint. I loved the family environment, and I was really looking for a mentor at that point in my life. I wanted to, at some point, open my own firm, and I just didn't know where to go, how to do it, where to start. And then Bob and I, after just a couple months of working here, it became apparent that like him and I could do this. So we just started working extremely closely together and working on growing it. But it was really like the fact that I could make a big impact and see it quickly I corporate America was not for me. I don't being a number is not for me. Like it's just not. And I think, bigger isn't always better. Like there are definitely tools and like resources that you'll get at a bigger company, but sometimes that personal interaction of that like one-on-one mentorship is so much more valuable. So it was really like those two main things I would say.
We're going to kind of start talking about some of the things that you did to grow into an executive leadership role in a few minutes, but want to talk about the construction industry. So if you want a good laugh, my first recruiting job out of college, I was a construction management headhunter for Aerotech.
Ah, I love hiring
That
new people. I've got like four of them.
And I remember they told me like once a week, put a hard hat on and just start walking on construction sites. Get to know people. I love that you're in the construction industry. Do you have any advice that you would have to other construction agency recruiters out there on how to be successful?
Yes. Um, the construction industry is so wonderful. The people are just genuine, direct, down to earth. Network. Go to networking events. I am very active in our local Associated Builders and Contractors networking group out here. I'm currently going through their leadership program, volunteering to chair the next one, or interviewing to chair it, rather. Um, they don't want to be sold to. They don't. They've got millions of people knocking down their door every day. They would rather come to the person who's direct to the point, can actually deliver, and doesn't need to do the whole salesy, you should work with us because we have XYZ resource. They don't care. They just want good candidates. So that my biggest piece of advice would be to be yourself at the end of the day and know your audience.
Awesome. Yeah, I remember like when I first started that, it was like a lot of very closed doors, and it wasn't until I actually started meeting people like actually on the construction sites, every now and then getting kicked off a few.
Yep.
They're like, "Hey, we're happy to work with you. You actually said hi. You know the space." But yeah,
Yep.
fast forward. But yeah, I'm excited about having you on the podcast, like really talking about how to grow your career within an agency. Because I remember when many years ago first started off at an agency, I had two options: be a recruiter and stay a recruiter. And actually, that's what I
Mhm.
wanted to do. And that turned into a fight in itself because they wanted me to go into sales or be an account manager, and that was really it. And through over the years, I've seen incredible people like yourself that have like found a way to grow within their agency and within their place where they're at. What are some of the things that you did and did different than other people to grow into a leadership position?
Ask for forgiveness, not permission. Um, Trust your gut, be strategic, come up with bigger picture ideas without anyone asking you to do it. One of the things that I can attribute to growing so quickly at Delta is that during COVID, we grew substantially, like 40%. And companies weren't growing, obviously. We all went through it. We were small and we were very niche. So we were basically just electrical construction at that time. And me and my CEO sat down and we're like, what do we do? And I was like, diversify. We don't have any business at any of these other companies. So if we can diversify just enough to break even and keep our heads above water, like that's a win. So we didn't have account managers when I first got here. It was just recruiters. And clients were getting hit up from all of us, which can be messy, frustrating. Like it just wasn't very organized. But we were small, and Bob was handling a lot of that at the time. And he's wonderful at it. He's the best on the phone that I've ever seen. Um, but we got to a point where we were outgrowing that structure, and I'm like, you can't be on the phone with every single client. It's not possible. So we put the account manager recruiter structure in place, and we developed that entire position, and the account managers were going out and drumming up business in the new divisions, et cetera, et cetera. So that was something that I just kind of did, and it wasn't like we had a big discussion with the whole team, and there was definitely a lot of like things behind the scenes we had to do to get organized, but I was like, we gotta do this. And that's what
So
just grow.
you you saw a problem and you proactively you're saying that you saw a problem and then you actually proactively put together a plan to go attack the problem.
Yeah. Hmm.
And I think that's important because I know there's a lot of times like when you are, at somewhere doing something, it's just I'd say a little bit of that fear of like, what if it doesn't work out, or what if fear of putting yourself out there. How did you get past that?
Um, I, for whatever reason, was just kind of born with like a I'm gonna do it anyway kind of mentality, which like has definitely not been maybe the best strategy every single time. But I honestly, this is more of a leadership question in my opinion because leaders at companies need to welcome ideas. And that's one of the things I think a lot of leaders don't do well. Here's the system, here's the structure, here's the numbers you have to hit. Go do it. And when team members are coming to them saying, well, that number doesn't make sense because my territory only has 100 prospects in it. And if I talk to 50 of them a week, I'm talking to all of them twice a week. And like, yeah, you're right. That mathematically doesn't make any sense. And it's those little things and like having an open door policy. And I think one of the things that Delta has always done well, even before me coming on board, was that they're open to that. They're open to the team's ideas and actually listening and making some changes.
Awesome. So flipping into some additional questions, what does it take in 2023 to be an incredible account manager for a firm?
Account manager. Oh boy. They're all the same to me. So there's three main things, in my opinion, you need to be successful in recruiting. Number one, by far, is sense of urgency. I have seen so many people come into this industry and they're like, I want to help people. And like, yes, we all want to help people at the end of the day, right? But if you are not on top of your stuff, you can't count on anyone else to be. You might send your client the best candidate on the planet. You cannot count on them to respond to your email. You have to proactively be following up and making sure that things are happening. So sense of urgency is like number one for me. Resilience is probably a close number two. So you're going to have bad days. And when you first start recruiting or account management, either or, you're making phone call, phone call, phone call, phone call. No one's calling you back. No one's answering the phone. The people who can't like bounce back from that quickly tend to not do well in this industry. Even on like the more tenured side. So you're a senior recruiter and you make, you're a $1 million biller or whatever it is. You're going to lose more deals than anybody because you're doing more deals, right? So it's those people that like they lose that deal and it's, maybe it was comp or whatever it was. And then it ruins their whole week and they just can't get past it. It's not going to work. A mentor of mine says, so what, now what? It's Barb Bruno. She's amazing. She's very well known in the industry, but it's always resonated with me because it's like, great, that happened. Spend 3 minutes, give yourself a pity party if you need to, take a walk, come back, it's done, And then grit is my third, but those two are very synonymous to me where it's like perseverance for your long-term goals. Knowing that one bad week doesn't mean a bad month or a bad quarter and being mindful that you're not going to hit it out of the park 100% of the time.
Great pieces of advice. Want to jump into some of these, questions I love to ask every single guest. What is there a book that has had a huge impact on your career?
Yes. Maybe my career and my life. The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. Have you read that?
Oh, that's a good book.
It's great. It's so good. I've read it multiple times. And reason being is I think that you just forget things over time, obviously. But I talk about this book to everybody, and I've bought this book for so many people. We'll be at the bar, and I'm like, you gotta read this book. I'm gonna Amazon it to you. The little things compound, and putting $5 away into a savings account a month and not looking at it, eventually, especially if it's in some type of stock account, you're gonna have growth, right? The same thing goes with every aspect of your life, whether it's working out, eating healthy, meditation, sleeping. But in recruiting, everything you do is gonna compound. And that's one of the things I drive home with all of the new recruiters here is like, what you're doing today, you might not see the fruit for 3 months. And that's a hard thing for a lot of people that get into recruiting and just have like a sales background to comprehend, because they're like, well, I used to close 10 deals a day. I'm like, wait, it's not going to happen here, So you might have 50 phone calls this month and you might not see a placement from that for 6 months. But knowing that those little activities, the text messages, the LinkedIn connections, the calls, the emails, the posts, probably more than anyone with all of your social media posts, like it takes time to get that traction, and just remembering the long-term goal.
Awesome. Now, when it comes to like numbers is always an important thing when it comes to recruiting. What kind of KPIs do you think are important for a recruiter to be successful?
The most important to me is the ratio between your submittals to your first interviews booked.
Okay.
I am such a firm believer in quality over quantity, results driven business. One thing I'm really proud of at Delta is that we have a 2-to-1 ratio for submittal to first interview, which is really, really good. It means that we know our clients, we're finding good candidates, and we're doing a good job on the delivery. So I'm a firm believer that you can submit 500 candidates a week. If you get 2 interviews, it doesn't mean anything. And the same with phone calls. I think a lot of, and you're from Aerotech, so I'm sure you have experiences, but a lot of the bigger firms, and there's a method to their madness, right? It's this number gets to that number, gets to that number, and it all matters at the end. But a lot of times, like pushing that number is actually what might ruin your relationship with your client, because then you're sending them, spaghetti at the wall. So knowing that, okay, if I send 10 candidates, I'm going to get 5 interviews. It's going to result in 3 offers and 2 are going to get accepted. And those are like Delta's real company-wide numbers. And if every recruiter knows what their specific numbers are to get that ratio right, that's all they need to know. Your more senior recruiters might only need to do 2 subs a week to get their whatever placements it is. So, just knowing your success rate, I think, is the most important.
Awesome. Do you have any like be advice for business development in 2023 to get new clients?
Yeah, I mean, I think the construction industry, as we discussed earlier, is more unique. But again, people don't want to be sold to right now. Nobody wants to be sold to, honestly. So my secret weapon has always been learn a little bit about the person and find a way to make it funny. So,
Okay.
like, let's say I'm talking to somebody from Buffalo and I want to get a new client there. I'm like, I'm from Buffalo too, man. Like, how do you live in that snow? And like they'll just laugh and be like, oh, I know, it's awful, right? And then you've already kind of gotten past that, like, that wall, right? That resistance. I don't want to talk to you. I don't know you. Um, and just making sure that you're genuine. Like, genuinity has taken me so much further than any script or tool or whatever it is. Like, just genuinely being myself, because people can tell. Like, they can tell if you're just pitching them.
It, I love what you're talking about, authenticity, because it really does just cut through the minutia of the drip campaigns that every single leader is on, the 50 emails they get. Just being, almost everybody right now has been talking, all the guys coming on the show are talking about just doing something different and being more human. I absolutely love this.
Well, you look at the world we're living in right now, and everyone's AI and Chat GPT and whatever it is. There's a million of them. But recruiting is a human relationship business. At the end of the day, like, yeah, your Chat GPT might be able to help you write a job description, but it's not going to be able to properly discuss your culture and how you guys interact and communicate. Like, that's human. You might have job boards that help you get candidates in, but who's calling them? And I've always told, like, when we're recruiting internally, because I do a lot of that obviously here, but I have a leader Chance that helps me with it too. But I tell him, I'm like, we have to excite these people. If we're just sending them an email of, hey, we think you're interesting, like, we're not going to get the best people. And we want to make sure that through that, like, human connection, that we're also making the right hire. And same for our clients. Like, you need to have that relationship and make sure that you guys jive, for lack of a better words, to make sure it's a good fit. And I don't think that any amount of technology is ever going to replace that.
So the next few questions I ask like everybody, but I think this is kind of like perfect because you actually have both senior recruiters in your team and junior recruiters in your team. What advice would you give to a recruiter that's just starting out with you to be successful for their entire career?
Trust the process. Don't ever let anyone tell you no, you can't do something. And don't be scared to pick up the phone. We are living in a world where everyone wants to sit behind the keyboard. And I see the benefit of that. And I do think that an interesting trend I'm seeing is that the millennials and Gen Z candidates sometimes prefer that. They don't necessarily want to be cold called, so to speak. But I think it's really hard to build a relationship not over the phone or virtually or whatever it is. We've talked for maybe 45 minutes at this point. I feel like I've known you for years. But it's just like those connections and making sure that you're getting past that like cold call fear right away. Because the sooner you pick up the phone, the easier it's going to get. And after 50 of them, it's going to be like, it just is not, you're not even going to think twice.
Great advice. I think there's a fear of cold calling in our industry, which, rejection sucks, but we are a heavy rejection industry, and that's just part of how to be successful in recruiting.
hmm Some of the best career advice I ever got was from Kelly, who works here. And she said, it's just another person. Why are you scared? And I was like, you're so right. So it's just, remembering that it's not as scary. All the things that you're coming up with in your head that are going to happen probably aren't going to happen.
I love that. Do you have a favorite recruiting tech tool at the moment that you guys love?
Yes, Zoom Info.
Okay.
I love Zoom Info. And the reason being is I think it's, again, maybe a little construction industry specific, but cell phones are like gold in this place. It's like you're like cell phone, you're like, oh, it's everything. And like, because a lot of the construction guys, they're on the job site or they're in the field or they don't answer their office phone or whatever it may be, and having access to their cell phone, like they usually will pick it up. And then being able to text them, because a lot of times they're busy, but if they see your text, they'll be like, oh, yep, I'll call you later. So that's been a really good tool for us, and just having a very closest to the money database, if you will. All relative candidates from companies that we like to recruit from because they have great candidates and, whatever it may be. But it's really helped us get to the next level of like just getting access to people.
Awesome. So recruiting, I feel like we're kind of going through a little bit of on the edge of a fundamental change with AI, with this, with that, which I think the human element for recruiting is always going to be there. But I would love to hear your thoughts on what the future of recruiting is going to, or what shift recruiting is going to go through in the future.
Yeah, and I've of course thought a lot about this one. Yeah, I don't think the human's ever going to get replaced in this process in general, but I do think that for certain industries, you'll see more of it. Call centers, places where they're more entry level roles and they do like volume hiring. A call center might hire 50 people in one class. So what those companies will probably have to do is and it'll be a lot less expensive for them, is get a internal recruiter who's not a recruiter, where they are, but they're not going out and finding candidates. They're just sourcing your current database, going through the applicants that have come in, maybe using some of the AI to get to the right candidates, and then just scheduling the interviews from there. So I think you'll see a lot of those types of companies reduce their TA team. And you're already seeing it happen. The big tech firms are cleaning house, and it's probably because they're a little ahead of the curve on the technology, because they either created it or they know it. So I think that's probably what will happen. And I do think we'll actually see, hopefully a popular opinion, I do think we'll see people start to lean on agencies more. I think
Okay.
they'll reduce their internal TA teams and lean on agencies more, because there are agencies out there who do that. They'll do the AI thing and they'll just sift through the candidates, and then they'll sell you that pool of candidates for a flat fee, you know?
We're definitely great advice, and I know we're going to be seeing a lot of shifts coming in. So it's going to be interesting, but like you said, the human element's always going to be there, and especially in the construction industry
Yeah, I
compared
mean,
to
it's
like probably other industries.
yeah, and we've had so many, things. I've only been in the industry for what, 8 years now, and I've seen so many things change. So many things. Um, you have to be ahead of the curve and be constantly learning and listening to podcasts, listening to what other leaders are doing, reading books, making sure that you're sticking to the basics, but also being proactive and adapting. You have to adapt to what's going on in the industry. LinkedIn didn't exist, I don't know, 10 years ago or whatever it is. And look what that's done. I mean, LinkedIn is a huge tool, and it's like to my some of my colleagues here that didn't have LinkedIn back in, their day, and they're like, this is the best thing ever. And I'm like, I don't even know what recruiting without LinkedIn would be. I have no idea. So we always see these changes, right? And I think the media does a great job of maybe scaring us sometimes. But I don't think it's going to replace recruiters at the end of the day.
Awesome. So this is actually one of my favorite questions. With everything that you've learned in your recruiting career, if you can go back and talk to Tori at the very beginning of her career, what advice would you give yourself?
I said it earlier, but bigger is not better. I can't stress that enough. And I think that goes for any industry. I don't think that's just the recruiting industry. A lot of times bigger can actually not be better because you lose that quality piece. Um, just making sure that you're going for a company that's going to be a fit for you and your personality. No one is responsible for your own happiness. And I think that's from 20 to 29. That was like my biggest lesson, is that, you can complain all day long about why you dislike your life or whatever it is, or your job, because you don't like your coworker or your manager or whatever. But that's on you at the end of the day. Like, you need to do your due diligence and don't just take a job, especially a recruiting job, because it was the first thing that came to you. Try to find a company that you fit in well and that you can see yourself like being a part of, because it really is magical. And this industry is great. And a lot of times you see a lot of turn and burn in these organizations because they just work you to the bone. They don't properly compensate you, whatever it is, and you can find a company that you'll want to be with for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And this industry can be beautiful. It can be lucrative. It can be rewarding. And the right company, your income is uncapped. And you need to just find the right company. That's my best advice. And I wish I had known that back when.
It's kind of talking about finding the right company. I'm so glad I fell into this recruiting world. But at the same time, like, a few years in, I was just like looking around. I'm like, I just opened up a, 1 point something million deal, got it taken away. It got passed on to another account manager. And just like, finding that right fit for me took some time.
Yeah,
So I
and
love that advice.
you can find the right fit in the big place too, right? Like, you can find maybe an office of a massive company where you jive well with that team, and like that happen. I see it happen all the time. I think it's more just like knowing, like sitting with yourself in a quiet space and knowing your values and what it is that you want to achieve and the type of people you want to be around. Like, that's the biggest thing that's gonna make or break you in life. If the top 5 people you spend time with are who you become. So if you spend all of your time with people that want to go out on Wednesdays and they don't save any money, whatever it is, they don't have good habits, like, you are most likely going to adapt. Finding people in your life that push you and hold you accountable and have healthy habits like that, that's really going to set you apart from most people.
Awesome. Well, Tori, before I let you go, is there anything else that you would love to share with the listeners?
Listen to Ben's podcast.
Thank you.
Have shared the podcast with my team. I think like doing stuff like this and getting out of your comfort zone a little bit is something I hope people take away from this. This is my first time doing a podcast. This has been a great experience. Network with people in the industry, find mentors, even if they don't have to necessarily be somebody who has 50 years of experience, but people that are doing the same things you want to do, and create those relationships and make some magic happen.
Awesome. Yeah, when it comes to like listening, like when finding mentors, like technology has become a great way to
Hmm.
find and follow mentors, sometimes without them actually knowing it.
Oh yeah, I'm a professional stalker.
Isn't that our job?
Exactly. Yeah, no, you're 100% right. I mentioned Barb Bruno earlier. Like, hopefully she sees this. Hi, Barb. She has been such a wonderful resource. She came in and did a in-house training for us last August, and she just, even without, she's written multiple books, but like I can pick up the phone and call her and say, hey, like, what do you think about this idea? And she'll be like, whatever it is. But yeah, I think having mentors in your life is really important, whether they're industry specific or just life specific.
Awesome. Well, Tori, thank you for coming on the podcast. Definitely thank you for sharing the experience of like how you've grown from just a recruiter to being an executive leader at a firm and giving advice and for other people to level up their careers. So, Tori, thank you so much for joining the podcast.
Thanks for
And for
having
the
me. This is
listeners,
great.
until next time.